Of the 7 wealthiest counties in the country, 5 of them border Washington, D.C. That includes the 2 richest. Now, this might shock you. Isn't D.C. a government town? How could it possibly be so wealthy? Where's all the money coming from?
They're making so much money in tech stocks that they've actually made more money this year than ever before.
There's a lot of people that come here for government jobs, a lot of lawyers.
A lot of corporate types, lawyers, lobbyists.
In this video, we will take you to 3 of the richest towns in the DC area to show you what they're like. Bro, check out this car in the McLean parking lot. All right, so we're coming up on a home that the UAE bought for $27.5 million. This right here is the home where RFK Jr. tried his first seed oils. And at the end of this video, we'll explain to you how the extremely unique DC economy works. This past year alone, the Department of Defense spent $600 billion, and the 5 biggest recipients of that money were all DC based. Come with us to the richest suburbs of our nation's capital. The first town we visit is McLean, Virginia. McLean is just 10 miles from Washington, D.C. and is home to some of the most beautiful estates in the D.C. metro area. But much of it looks ordinary. This right here is a classic McLean, Virginia street. So this home right here goes for $2.4 million. Now this home is one of the more classic McLean, Virginia homes. A lot of the homes here were built in the 50s and 60s. This house here is still going for $1 million. Despite having streets that look like regular suburbs, the median listing price for homes in McLean is $2.8 million. Yet if the regularness of the homes doesn't surprise you enough, come with us to McLean's downtown. Like, look at this. You'll see, like, yeah, BMW and an Audi and a Jeep parked for what looks like a shopping mall you can see in, Youngstown, Ohio. Now, McLean has long been a rich town with top-ranked schools. In fact, this article from the Washington Post in the 1980s highlights Fairfax County, the home of McLean, as the richest county in the country. But the level of wealth in recent years has soared.
All of my neighbors, like my next door neighbors, 1.8 million. Across the street, 2 million. Across the street, 1.8 million. It used to be rural, like forest country, and then it's been developed into newer houses, newer mansions, if you will.
Yeah.
It's a huge government contracting area just because of the government here. I grew up here. I was born and raised here.
Wow.
So I'm rare.
Yeah.
Most people are transient. They move here mostly because of the government. Government contractors, especially the people that own the companies, make a lot of money. I own a swimming pool company, and a lot of my customers own contracting firms. Then they go on to sell their companies and make millions of dollars. The big thing is the influx of new residences. There used to be big properties, like 5-10 acres, and they rezoned it so now you can put 5 houses on 5 acres. I don't know, you just get a different level of wealth. I don't want to say it's less simple, but people had normal houses back in the day. You know what I mean? Back in the 90s, they're nice houses, but that's what I mean. The priority is having a big house instead of a big yard. I'm a very small business, right?
Yeah.
This has been one of the best years I've seen in 10 years. But the richest of the rich, they're making so much money in tech stocks and energy stocks that they've actually made more money this year than ever before.
And by the way, this guy's right. There are about 400,000 contractors in the greater DC area. They work from small firms like this one in Loudoun County to much bigger contracting firms like Boeing. But we'll get to that later. If you want to see old money in McLean, you've got to see this neighborhood over here, which is home to some pretty famous Americans. All right, we're walking up to a landmark right here. This is Hickory Hill, the longtime home of the Kennedy family. RFK's family, RFK Jr. grew up here. He talked about how this used to be more countryside, riding his horse around.
We lived at Hickory Hill, which was about 7 or 8 minutes from the White House. We had a lion, we had the seal in the pool, and my mother played a big role in that. Horses that were galloping free in the yard, and that she would sometimes ride through the house.
I mean, come on. This part of McLean is really incredible. Another just amazing home. This house right here is a $9 million house. This new one under construction is going for $18 million. It's 24,000 square feet. Got a little dome at the top. I mean, it's just insane real estate around here. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, just looking for a house here. All right, so we're coming up on a home that the UAE bought for $27.5 million last year. It's the most expensive home last year sold in the DC area. But they now have a portfolio of $200 million worth of homes. Folks, this is about as close as we're gonna get to it. Yeah, so that house is 21,000 square feet, and it's really odd that it's like less than a mile from the CIA. It's not just in McLean, by the way, that Arabs are investing money. Wealthy Arab citizens and even governments have been pouring money all over DC. So lately, Arab countries have been making huge purchases in the area, including at this famous estate. This is the childhood home of Jackie Onassis. Now, Saudi Arabia bought it for $43 million. The official buyer was the Embassy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But again, they're really expanding their footprint here. And then right next door to Marywood, Qatar has bought even more real estate. It's bought a house right over here, and it's bought over $50 million worth of land on the Potomac. They're gonna build some insane homes. One other interesting note about McLean is that it's right next door to the CIA. The CIA is right here. So the CIA, located in Langley, Virginia, which is really part of a McLean, is located right there. We would really like to stay alive for the entirety of the video, so we are not going to get any closer than that. Our next stop is also in Virginia, the beautiful town of Great Falls. By the way, before we get to Great Falls, if you're enjoying this video, please make sure to hit subscribe. Our purpose on this channel is to capture the world without bias or fear and to dig into important stories like this one. Back to Great Falls. All right, we are now in the rustic, country, rural, wealthy DC suburb of Great Falls, and that's the most expensive house, 21,000 square feet. It's going for $16 million. I mean, when your government spends $6 trillion a year, you're gonna get a lot of houses like that right next door. This behind us is the home of the current governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. He lives here in Great Falls, and he's a perfect insight into the economy of DC. He was previously the CEO of Carlyle, which is a huge private equity firm that actually kind of built itself off of working with private defense contractors like Boeing and Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, all those companies. Great Falls versus McLean. We're just coming from McLean. How would you compare the two?
Great Falls is more spread out, fewer people. If you can, the real estate rates are much higher in McLean because there's a lot higher density there.
Yes.
So this is just a little more spread out.
All right, one of the things she just told us that's interesting, nice Rover, is that a lot of the big homes here are all new. There's a ton of new money in the area, and she said that makes it different than Scarsdale, for example, where there's a lot of old money. Great Falls, most of it's new. The median listing price in Great Falls is $2.4 million, but it's still not the most lavish town in the area. That crown would belong to the next town we visited, which is in Maryland, and that town is Potomac. But first, let's talk about the DC economy. Okay, at this point, we have to talk about how DC is so wealthy. I mean, of course, the fact that DC is wealthy, that there are rich people in the DC area might not surprise you. But come on, 5 of the 7 wealthiest counties in the country, all surrounding the federal government? Here's how that happened. The first thing to note is that the 5 of the 7 wealthiest counties line is a little misleading. It goes by median household income, meaning all you have to have is a high middle bar. The high end in DC is not as high as other areas like Atherton, California, or Greenwich, Connecticut, but the DC economy is built for having a high middle bar. It's a hub for stable, high salary jobs in bureaucracy, defense contracting, lobbying, lawyer jobs, and policy-related industries like think tanks that pay far above national averages. Now, the reason that it's a hub for stable, high-paying jobs is, of course, the federal government. Here's something important to remember. It's hard to get very rich working for the federal government. The people living in these mansions almost certainly don't work for the federal government, but you can get rich working with the federal government. When you think about the biggest companies based in the DC area, almost all of them work with the federal government. There are a couple exceptions like Marriott in Maryland and Capital One in Virginia, but generally speaking, they're companies that you, the taxpayer, fund. And there's no sector that gets more of your money than the defense sector. Consider them for a moment. This past year alone, the Department of War, I guess, spent $600 billion on defense contractors. That's the majority of its budget. $600 billion is equal to the annual revenue of Nike, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's combined times 5. And the 5 biggest recipients of that money were all DC-based. The biggest one is Lockheed Martin in Maryland, then RTX in Arlington, then General Dynamics in Fairfax County, then Boeing in Arlington, and then finally Northrop Grumman in Falls Church. You, on average, paid $1,800 last year to support these companies. That's a lot of money, and it's straight into the DC economy. maybe into houses like this. But it's not just the big defense contracting companies. DC is the highest consultant per capita ratio in the country. It also has the major lobbying firms, which pay extremely well, and every major law firm has an office in Washington, D.C. In other words, the DC economy isn't an economy where hedge funders like in Connecticut make $25 billion or tech founders make $100 billion, but it is an economy where a lot of people make about $500,000. That's simplified, but pretty true. And now let's go see more of the wealth in the DC area, and specifically in Potomac, Maryland, its wealthiest town. And our first stop wasn't a rich neighborhood, but instead the Billy Goat Trail. All right, one thing you may not appreciate about the DC suburbs is just how beautiful the terrain is. It's super lush, it's incredible geography, and here in Potomac, it feels like you're kind of rural, you're kind of in nature. Then we went to one of Potomac's nicest neighborhoods where we met with a native of Potomac and also one of the area's top realtors.
It's not as big lots. Like all around here is at least 2 acres, different architecture, but the good news is you got a lot of land. When I moved back here, and I've been back for 20 years, all the trend was anyone wanted to move as close into the city as possible. That all changed during COVID. Now there's a lot of money here.
Yeah, old money?
I think so. I think this is a really old neighborhood. A lot of my clients happen to be a lot of doctors, but also there's a lot of people that come here for government jobs. A lot of lawyers.
A lot of lawyers.
A lot of lawyers. We're in a very litigious part of the country.
Yeah.
It's DC. And DC is not just DC. DC is Northern Virginia. It's Montgomery County. It's Maryland.
Yes.
I mean, it's the DMV,
Yes.
which I hate. We never called that growing up here. I'm like, I moved back, I'm like, what do you mean the DMV? But a lot of people move to Montgomery County, even if it's just from DC, for the schools. Because our schools really are highly rated. I think when people move to Potomac, they want land, they want more space, they want more privacy. I mean, McLean is beautiful, Great Falls is stunning.
Yes.
They're all beautiful neighborhoods
beautiful.
right outside of DC.
Yes.
That's the beauty about living here, is that you take advantage of all 3 places, no matter where you live.
Are there any companies around here that...
Marriott. There's a lot of them. Lockheed Martin. In fact, there's a lot of biotech companies all around here in Rockville. AstraZeneca. I
You
mean,
get the Dan Snyders.
his house won't sell because he did such a bad job.
I know, who wants that? Karen, thank you so much. This was so helpful. All right, so this is what the town village in Potomac looks like. It's very quaint, feels very old money, aristocratic. I'm seeing a lot of people here after school. There's a lot of nice cars in the parking lot, of course. And it's funny to think that this is the kind of place that Brett Kavanaugh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Neil Gorsuch, Jay Powell, they all probably would have gone to hang out when they were in high school around here. Someone just pointed out, and I totally forgot about this, but there is a Real Housewives of Potomac show on Bravo.
I mentioned it to Mia that you all had a lot of questions. Your face cracked.
How has this area changed in the last 50 years?
The development, it's mushroom. I can tell. My wife grew up here. She could see the changes more than I have. But just the development, the population, you could run into people that you know each other, or you run into people that know somebody that you know. It's still a small town. You have a lot. The government is a big influencer here. A lot of government workers, a lot of corporate types, lawyers, lobbyists, and the biomedical area is big in Montgomery County. I work with Afghan refugees.
Wow.
Through my church, and I grew up poor. My mother raised 3 kids by herself, but I wish people who have money would give back more to the community. If you work hard, you should keep it, but give back what you've been blessed with.
You know, we just had someone tell us something off the record that you might find interesting. He said the fact that so many of the richest counties and richest towns in the country are right around DC is, pardon the French, fucked up. He says that's a sign that the government's way overspending and people are leeching up the government, building out all these consulting firms and contracting firms that sort of, you know, make a lot of money from a federal government that spends trillions of dollars each year, including hundreds of billions to companies based in this area. So that was a different perspective than we've heard so far, and one that I would imagine a lot of people in the comments are going to feel about the concentration of wealth in the DC area. But of course, we have to end the day in front of the home of one of DC's least favorite residents, and that resident is Dan Snyder. As if Dan Snyder couldn't take more L's, get a load of this. This is the entrance to his home. Big security cameras everywhere. It's for sale for $25 million. It used to be for sale for $49 million. So as if Dan Snyder couldn't take any more L's after his Commander's tenure, he's 50% down from his original price. Unbelievable home, though. I'll give him that.
I think what the league would love is for Snyder to sell the team. Not have to go to a vote, but just sell the team. Because it's become a major problem around the league, obviously.
So as you can see, there is a lot of money in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, whether this is a good or bad thing is, as usual, for you to decide. Now, some would argue it's not the worst thing. The fact that the D.C. area has the highest education rates in the entire country and that we have a lot of smart, well-compensated companies working with the federal government is not the worst thing in the world. Of course, opponents would then say that D.C. has a swamp around it and that corruption comes with our ever-growing, ever-expanding federal government that spends $6 trillion a year. Regardless, it was fascinating to see these towns in the area was beautiful. You can't deny this. It's one of the most unique economies in the country, and we're glad you could see its fruits. Thank you for watching, and please make sure to subscribe.